Deep in the heart of the vast Southern Ocean lies a belt of cold, windswept islands. Surrounded by a monstrous sea and pounded by relentless winds, these islands have had an irresistible draw since the days of the first 18th century Antarctic explorers. The first wave of men came only for profit, exploitation, and left a legacy of destruction. The second came in the name of science and discovery, hoping to learn more about the Antarctic and the polar sky above. But today, at the close of the millennium, these islands have a strange new attraction, one that would be incomprehensible to any 18th century explorer happening to arrive on its shores. This is the story of ZL9CI, Campbell Island. This DXpedition begins its journey in the world's most southern capital city, Wellington, New Zealand. Located at the southern tip of the North Island, Wellington is also the gateway to the South Island and one of New Zealand's more picturesque cities surrounding a magnificent natural harbour. As one of the South Pacific's more thriving cultural and commercial centres, Wellington is also the administrative capital of New Zealand and the working home of the government, which operates in one of New Zealand's more historic and interesting looking buildings, appropriately named the Beehive. And less than 1 kilometre away on Queen's Wharf is the Braveheart, the ship specially redesigned and chartered to host the ZL9CI DXpedition on its month-long journey down to Campbell Island. This 134-foot diesel-powered ship is actually an ex-Japanese government scientific vessel built in the early 1980s for oceanographic research in the North Pacific. Fresh out of a 4-month refit that was carried out to accommodate this expedition, the Braveheart now sleeps 17 and is specifically designed for small party research and photographic journeys to the more remote corners of the Earth. After arriving from 4 different continents, the expedition team begins the process of loading up the ship for the long voyage ahead. Some items, such as antennas and transceivers, only arrived in Wellington days before departure. But last to arrive, for obvious reasons, is the food. In addition to fresh fruit and vegetables, case after case of frozen meat is loaded into the ship's large freezers. The amount of food taken along has been calculated to comfortably last the month-long duration of the expedition, plus several extra days in case of emergency. The owner of the Braveheart, Nigel Jolly, is a veteran of many expeditions with National Geographic. And though this is his first DXpedition, his interest in the ZL9CI project and the team has been keen. The maiden voyage of his new ship Braveheart will be the perfect test of the vessel's capability in handling a fully loaded expedition during a month of heavy weather. On a picture-perfect January 1st, the Braveheart slips out of the wharf into the brilliantly sunny Wellington Harbour, bound for Campbell Island. Once out of the bay, the ship will hug the coast of New Zealand all the way down to Stewart Island, before heading out into the open ocean in approximately 48 hours. Permits to visit Campbell Island are issued by the New Zealand Department of Conservation, but are almost impossible to obtain for more than 1 day. A full 2 years of hard negotiation managed to secure the ZL9CI permit, subject to a restriction that no overnight stays would be allowed. But living within license and permit boundaries is what makes DXpeditioning all the more challenging. And though the team appealed their case up until the very last days before departure, the general agreement was to press on and work around the restriction as much as possible.
This has taken 2.5 years in the preparation. A lot of hard work, a lot of good team efforts gone into organising it. I did the first one, ZL9CI, by myself, and Lee decided early on in the piece that it was too much to put this one together by one person. So he took on the logistics side of it, and it's been a really, really great relief. We did have a very, very good team going to Row. I think we've got an exceptionally good team this time. Without all their individual contributions and the support of their families, I don't think we'd be here today. We learned a lot during the ZL9CI expedition. The biggest and most important lesson we learned was to have a decent sort of boat. We had the Evoe going to ZL9CI, and on this trip we've got the Braveheart, a far different vessel, substantially bigger, better crewed, better accommodation, and we certainly don't want anything that went wrong like it went wrong with the Evoe. Lack of food, poor crew. There's not a lot of other things that we learned during the ZL9CI expedition. It's just that we'd like to do things perhaps a lot better this time.
Campbell Island lies 1,400 kilometres southwest of Wellington at 52 degrees latitude, and the journey down is expected to take just under 4 days. Smooth sailing like this is a gift anywhere at sea, and the team uses their second day out of port for antenna assembly. Most of these antennas are brand new, and in particular the 10 and 15 metre monobanders donated by Cushcraft are as yet unreleased to the public for sale. Even though all parts were verified and re-verified before departure, assembling these becomes a bit tricky at times, especially to those normally used to the classic BA and CD series of monobanders. The goal for the day is to have all Yagi elements pre-assembled, labelled and bundled together on the aft deck for Zodiac transport. The simple boom attachment once on the island should save at least a day of outdoor work in what will most probably be wind and rain. Though the weather forecast shows no storm activity in this vicinity, the body of water ahead is rarely calm and will not permit delicate work such as this. By day's end, the Braveheart will pass Stewart Island at the southern tip of New Zealand, out of the Pacific and into the heart of the Southern Ocean. Campbell Island loomed out of the Southern Ocean swell on January 4th, 3 days and 7 hours out of Wellington. Its volcanic cliffs looking just as uninviting as 2 centuries of mariners always described. Measuring only 14 kilometers at its longest point across, Campbell has several natural anchorages, and on this expedition, the Braveheart will head down Perseverance Harbour, which was named after the first ship to discover the island. The land surrounding this well-protected inlet has been the focus of much human activity on Campbell for the last 200 years, including the abandoned meteorological station at Beeman Point. The damp, empty buildings will serve as the ZL9CI shack for the next 3 weeks. The expedition's permit to land restricts access during the hours of total darkness, and by the time the Braveheart is preparing to drop anchor, it is too late to attempt any trips with the Zodiac, and the team must anxiously wait out the hours on board until sunrise. Though the permit only allows access at first light, the team has been up well before dawn. First over to investigate are logistics and antenna teams, who need to confirm the operating site and layout, which has been precisely planned for months in advance by use of photographs and maps. The antenna team, led by EI6FR and GI0NWG, quickly realized that the 2 planned operating sites for SSB and CW can actually be combined into one, but with 2 antenna fields separated by almost 350 meters. This allows both modes to take advantage of hillside takeoffs over water and all generator lines and equipment to be centralized into the Met Station's technical building. Though it's a radical shift from the original plan of 2 different mode sites, the advantages are weighed and discussed with the expedition leaders, who make the final decision to combine the shacks and alter the plan.
SSB one side, CW the other side, and you guys have sorted out the antennas. There's plenty of room for the Battle Creek Special, so we'll run with that idea. As a second site we can use the generator shed, and I think that should be pretty good. Yeah, this building here, this is what the old balloon shed. The Met Service are going to door it while they're here, so we want to try and keep all antennas that we assemble away from the door area. They're going to also do some work on the roof of the technical building up behind us, so we don't want to get too close to the roof of the operating room that's at the back end, that side.
So what we were going to do was put our beams up in a line along here and at the back, and also the Gladiator on an elevated radial system.
So it's ideal, and we can miss the hill in both places.
We'll show you the SSB sites.
Those gate points.
And we have the ladders to raise it with, so
Yes.
and you're sitting on top of the ridge here.
Yes.
It's your main direction.
We've got a good takeoff virtually everywhere.
Like they haven't selected their
Not
site
south of here, so
for an aerials that are no bloody good, have they?
No, they've selected the best site.
Yeah.
We're using it.
Be a nice day.
Certainly coming from the south though, isn't it?
What was that?
Might be a nice day today.
Chris said he did look at the wall.
Going to be a
He said it was
magnificent
gonna be
day.
today.
Little blue
Today.
sky showing
Today,
through.
no, I
He didn't
think,
say what was it the rest
Exactly
of the
what
I
day.
we
think
need.
that's an important word. The weather's going
Bodes
to be
well
good.
for
for
plenty of
the
sunshine.
expedition.
What's the time? 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock in the morning.
For environmental reasons, no ship is allowed to dock at Campbell Island's small wharf, and consequently the operation to unload antennas, generators, transceivers, and all other gear is expected to take the good part of 1 day. But with the teams divided into organized groups, the operation goes smoothly, especially so because of the unusually good weather. The technical building and most of the Met Station lies on top of a steep hill overlooking Perseverance Harbour to the east. a gasoline-powered vintage rail track built years ago to help haul bulky gear up to the top, was actually found to be in working order, and the heaviest items, such as generators and amplifiers, managed to catch a free ride. And for Campbell's resident antenna inspectors, a new 5-element 15 is of particular interest. This hillside may be an excellent location for DX, but it also happens to be a favourite playground for Hooker's sea lions, which abound in and around Campbell Island. Bent elements or not, this is one of the rarest sea lion species in the world, and since Campbell is home to one of the largest concentrations, special care is taken to respect their habitat and avoid any confrontation. At a pleasant 15 degrees Celsius, this warm, sunny weather is completely unexpected. A typical high temperature for Campbell Island in January is usually only around 10 degrees, with less than 100 hours of sunshine. These temperatures the team are experiencing on their first day at Campbell are quite abnormal. In the sunshine of this spectacularly beautiful day, one by one the antenna farm of ZL9CI rises into the air. In only one more day, the complete DXpedition site will be wired and ready to hit the airwaves. With 6 stations going full throttle, ZL9CI jumps headfirst into the pile-ups at 0100 UTC on January 7th. In total, 8 complete operating positions have been assembled: 3 SSB, 3 CW, 1 standby, and 1 dedicated for 6 meters. But with only 11 operators, even the island permit restriction of 18.5 hours a day seems to be too much. The QSO rate averages 600 per hour, and after 24 hours of operating, there are a staggering 11,100 QSOs in the log. The first week's strategy is simple. Keep 1 CW and 1 SSB station on every open band, and maximize all the hours allowed on the island.
JA2X-ray Washington、こんにちは、59です、どうぞ。はい、こんにちは、59です。また160、楽しみにしております。はい、お願いします。QRZ009 チャーリーインディア。
Kilowatt 8, kilowatt 8. Kilowatt 8, Foxtrot Zulu, 59. Roger, we're having a great time. ZL9CI.
November 9, Whiskey, Quebec, Nancy 9, Washington, Queen.
November 9, Washington, Queen, you're 59.
Roger, the 59, you're also 59 Wisconsin.
Roger, thank you.
Victor.
Kilo 1, Radio Victor, 59.
Roger, also 59.
Roger, thank you. ZL9CI, 300 up. Delta Kilo 0, Alpha Kilo 59. Roger, thank you. QRZ.
Okay, it's W86, listening on
Juliet
86,
Victor Golf,
ZL9CI.
G4 JVG, thanks. ZL9CI 205.
Papa Oscar 59.
Juliet 509. Echo Alpha 3, thank you.
Okay, Sugar Papa 2, Mike Papa
George
Oscar,
Charlie,
thank you,
509.
ZL9CI 80 to 90.
I2ZGC, thanks. ZL9CI 205.
This DXpedition has used an awful lot of coaxial cable. We brought about 11 spools of coax, or drums as they refer to them here, about 1.2 kilometers of coaxial cable, and we've used every bit of it. We maybe have 3 or 4 meters left on the final drum, but we've used it all.
We brought quite an extensive antenna farm, 2 5-element monobanders for 10, 2 5-elements for 15, a 3-element for 20, a 4-element for 20, which we cut back to a 3-element, plus 2 3-element geoband Yagis for 12 and 17. Single vertical for 30, 4 square for 40. We made a vertical for 80 meters phone while we were here, and we also had the Battle Creek for 40, 80 and 160.
Designed and pre-assembled out of everyday pipe and using a Comtech switchbox, the 40-metre 4-square was a powerhouse. That is until one morning when one element snapped and it became a 3-square. Initially, blame was placed on the wind, which had been especially fierce that morning. But a closer look in the grass found the real culprit, who had bulldozed through one of the guy wires and was now trying to make a quick getaway from the scene of the crime. The field in which the 4-square stands is a favourite for young male sea lions, and an accident like this was inevitable. An antenna repair crew was dispatched to assess the damage and find a quick but sturdy solution to the bent pipe, and one that would survive wind and seal for another 10 days. And with a little drilling and a piece of discarded wood, 40 metres was back in action in less than an hour.
JA7 ですか、どうぞ。ZL1 オスカーヤンキーユニフォーム QSR 0リーム9チャーリーインディア。参加したメンバーの中で唯一の日本人ではあるんですけども、グループ全体として何をやらないといけないかということがまず一つあって、その中で自分の役割っていうのを考えてきたつもりです。特に日本 JA だけを相手にしていくつもりはなかったですけども、でもやはり役割として日本人としての日本語が喋れる、日本語がわかるっていうメリットはチームのためには生かすべきです。November Zulu Whiskey 59 JF1 QSL Zulu Lima 9 Charlie India.
The sea lions are with us at all times. Whenever we go to turn an antenna, we usually take 2 people with us. If we're walking down the pathways, they'll be in the bushes, and you'll be crouched down to get a guy wire to turn the antenna, and there will be a great roar, and a sea lion will challenge you. It really puts the fear into you, and they're quite an interesting colony of sea lions around here. They seem to be curious. They'll challenge you, but none of them has really had a go at us and kept chasing us. They've chased several of us out of the way.
It is a nature area, and the island is primarily for the birds, the seals and all the other wildlife that are around that need protecting. The island is soon to become a World Heritage Site as well, so it will gain that higher classification in the Protection Act.
Tiny Campbell Island was discovered in 1810 by a sealing mariner called Hasselberg and was named after the owner of the ship he commanded. As with all subantarctic islands in those days, any new discovery meant profit, and sealers descended upon its shores almost immediately. Within 20 years, many of the animals had been wiped out, and Campbell slowly became insignificant compared to its close neighbours Macquarie and Auckland. By the late 1800s, when a government sealing restriction came into effect, Campbell was used mostly as a shipwreck depot and an occasional hideout for poachers. It was only then that the government agreed to lease the island to sheep farmers in the hopes that this unspoiled wilderness could turn a profit for any hardy farmhand willing to endure the cold climate and extended isolation of the sub-Antarctic. At the turn of the century, whalers were still hunting along Campbell's shores, but just like the sealers, were slowly watching their annual catch decline. Some of these men were enlisted to work on the farms during the summers, thus splitting their seasons more profitably. But the lack of regular cargo ships and a miserable climate eventually ended the farming era in failure, and the island and its sheep were abandoned in 1931. 8 years later, in 1939, at the beginning of World War II, the first radio signals were heard from Campbell and Auckland as secret military watchposts were set up as part of a Pacific-wide Coast Watch operation to catch enemy intruders who might use the sub-Antarctic islands as a hideout. In 1955, the meteorological station was constructed, partly to participate with the growing network of manned atmospheric observation stations in the Antarctic, and also to collect valuable weather and scientific data from New Zealand's most southerly possession. But as with so many of the Antarctic's old weather stations, data collection eventually became automated, and after 40 years of continuous occupation, the buildings were abandoned in 1995, and Campbell Island was once again left to nature.
Was on 80 metres CW early this morning around 4:30 a.m. local time, and worked 30 or 40 Europeans on 80 metres, which I guess made them happy. This whole business of not being able to stay overnight has been pretty hard to explain to DXers worldwide. They want us to be there, and it's disappointing for us because at the last couple of hours before darkness is when we're getting our best run rates, and we'd really like to be on there for particularly the low banders and 20 metres. I've tried to be particular about the accuracy of what we get in the logs. I've had experience myself of that 99% sure I've worked the DX and sent off the QSL card and it comes back as not in the log. So I'm making a particular effort to ensure that every call that goes into the log is accurate. And if I manage that, I'll feel I've done a good job here.
Even though their modification was prohibited, at first glance the two remaining towers from the Met Station era look like a lowbander's dream come true. Over 70 feet tall, and one still with coax, ballon and wire attached, it looked like a simple job to lower and adapt this magnificent V-beam to 80 or 160 with very little effort. Especially so since the antenna was rigged with a simple counterbalance pulley system in perfect working order, and the antenna itself was beaming stateside. Regulations or not, curiosity won out, and the coax was hunted down and analysed for any signs of a resonant frequency just in case it happened to fall anywhere near 80 or 160. But sadly, in the end it didn't, and while the wire seemed fine, the coax and ballon were pronounced DOA.
Well, we had a number of requests for 80 metres phone. As I said, we hadn't originally planned to do that, but so we found a few lengths of aluminium pipe, about 40 feet long.
Don't make it too heavy, eh?
I don't know how you're going to get a warthog in there.
Well, we got a warthog in here. We'll just drive it through the bloody. Yes, it will work. We have done serious engineering on this project, and it will work.
Well, I have my doubts.
Yeah, it'll work. It's got string, it's got chock blocks, and it has wine bottles. Of course it'll work.
Hi, Mum. Go out, Jason. Whoa,
whoa.
Yep, take it, Murray. Take it.
Set it up on a bottle, put a few radials on it and pulled the wire off the top to resonate it, basically an inverted L. And it performed exceptionally well close to the sea. It only took about an hour to 90 minutes to put up, and there are a number of guys happy now.
Alpha Echo 4 Foxtrot Zulu, you're 59. Roger, thank you. QRZ 5 to 10 up, 95 to 800, please. 795 to 800, Zulu Lima 9 Charlie India. Whiskey Zero again. Whiskey Zero again. Is that Whiskey Zero Golf Lima? Whiskey Zero Golf Lima? Is that Whiskey Zero Golf Lima? Whiskey Zero Golf Lima? Whiskey Zero Golf Juliet. Whiskey Zero Golf Juliet, you're 59.
Well, I didn't expect a DXpedition to be quite so competitive. I didn't understand that people are looking at us, people are judging us, people are recognising the good things we do, the bad things we do. They're also very vocal. For me, it's always been a challenge, a personal challenge to break my way through the pile-up, and I never ever thought of criticising the DXpedition operators. But of course now we're sitting on the other side of the fence, and it's very interesting for me.
We'll go split, we'll go up 5, ZL9CI.
The daily task of collecting, checking and uploading logs to the web every day was in the hands of ZL2BSJ and N5KO.
What we do is we go around at a given time, which is usually a quiet time, sort of late morning, and collect all the logs from the individual stations. We also collect paper log sheets from the stations that people write their bend and mode changes in, and the two of them get checked. Trey's written a little clever piece of code that does all the checking. The way we get our logs to the web at ZL9CI is different from other DXpeditions so far, in that we do the forwarding, the data forwarding on HF Pactor 2 and not by satellites. I did bring some satellite gear, but the Pactor has been working so well that I haven't even bothered setting it up and it's still in the box.
The misty hills and valleys of Campbell sometimes feel more like the coast of Ireland or Scotland than they do an island far away in the Southern Ocean. Perhaps this similarity may be partially explained by the fact that the antipode of Campbell Island is actually only 30 miles off the coast of Ireland. Much of the thick tussock land that covers this ancient volcanic island can grow year-round due to a relatively constant temperature and a thick black layer of peat underneath. Before the late 1800s, Campbell Island had even more greenery, but vast ecological damage was done here by free-roaming sheep left behind by the failed farming industry 100 years ago. The thick grasses and ferns which grow in and around the hillsides of Campbell give the land an almost tropical feel in the bright sunshine. In amongst the scrub, several species of flowering plant, or megaherbs as they are called, add a splash of bright colour onto the otherwise dull green landscape. There are no trees on Campbell Island, except for one, a spruce which was planted here almost 100 years ago and has the honour of not only being the most southerly tree on planet Earth, but also the loneliest. The wildlife of the island is also typical of the subantarctic belt, with abundant seabirds such as albatross, penguin, and also Hooker's sea lions, which thrive on Campbell's grasslands and protected bays.
One of the things that's interesting about this is in terms of pacing yourself, in terms of how to organize your own goals and expectations, it's quite a bit different from a contest. We roughly have a plan that we've been following since we landed on the island of how to sweep the bands. And so day by day we've been getting on the air with as many stations as we can support based on the conditions at the time. And then after a week we started taking a look at the continental breakdowns by band and figuring out where we've been missing some openings. We need some more Europeans on this band, or we need some more J's on that band, or we don't have enough W's on this band. Now we've been focusing on filling the holes, trying to sort out what we're missing. And it's kind of like a bingo game where you're Xing out all the boxes on the bingo card. So little by little the bingo card is filling up. In a contest, maybe we get on and we spend 48 hours shoveling out the bands, we make a big push, we knock ourselves out. At the end of the contest, we can go, yeah, we lived, we survived, we made it. That same type of outlook doesn't really serve you quite as well here because maybe you have to keep that up for 20, 21, 22, 25 days.
This is my first major DXpedition. I've done a couple of 3 IOTA ones before, and the pileups in this are just unbelievable compared with the IOTA ones. Some well behaved, some not. The one thing I've learned about being on this end of the pileup is to listen a lot more to what the DXpedition's doing. Try and figure out where he's listening, try and anticipate where he's going to be next, and just generally follow the instructions he gives, because I know in this one we've done a few sly things, a few sly receive tricks, and if the guys had have been listening, they would have picked it up and got the cue a lot quicker.
The building that the amateur group are using is the Met station, and behind me here is one of the automatic weather data sending units, and basically that sends data up to the satellites, which is transmitted every hour back to New Zealand. It's quite interesting that a lot of the buildings here on the island are owned by the Met station, who has had a function here since the 1950s. They decided to close down the base. They had up to 10 guys working here at times, and then they went to the automation, which is the little unit here, which sends the data back every day. Although the Met service are here, the island is administered by the Department of Conservation. Obviously Met own a bulk of the buildings, and DOC administer the land and the permits and things. I've got a dual role really, being a ham radio operator on one side and the DOC representative on the other. My main duty of the expedition is to administer the permit and make sure that everybody in the party adheres to the permit. That means making sure they don't enter the island before the arrival time, and also making sure they depart the island on the departure time. The only reason that the ham radio group are allowed to stay overnight is if the weather cuts up rough and the skipper of the boat decides that it is too dangerous for safety reasons to bring the Zodiac across to pick everybody up and take them back to the boat. I had my first pile-up the other day, and I couldn't believe my ears. It's just bedlam. There was just so many people screaming out their call signs, and I just couldn't handle it. It was just too much, and I couldn't hear because there were so many people calling.
Hey, come on guys, give us a chance to hear him. Whiskey 1 America, Whiskey 1 America only, please.
Whiskey 1 America, Italy, Mike. America, Italy, Mike. 5 and 5, over.
Roger, Whiskey 1 America, India Mike. Whiskey 1 America.
I really don't know how they determine all the call signs in amongst all the yelling public out there. It's really quite unbelievable. It's certainly not my scene, and I leave it to the experts.
A typical day for most members of the ZL9CI team would start at dawn, when the skipper makes his way to the bunks below for the dreaded wake-up call.
Good morning! Wakey wakey! Time to get up! Jun-san? Ohayo gozaimasu? O genki desu ka? Ii desu.
Good morning, DX land, and what a wonderful morning it is.
Trey? Yep. You awake, good man? It's a beautiful day. Time to do it.
Oh, gee whiz, how are you this morning there, Captain?
The sleepy faces down below and upstairs at the breakfast table are almost always the result of another late night of pile-ups. Though the ZL9CI operating permit lasts from 5:30 a.m. until midnight local time every day, stronger band conditions exist in the evenings, and consequently, most of the team is assigned to work late rather than early. The smaller three-man early shift actually starts with a pre-dawn 4:30 a.m. wake-up call, which is not exactly every person's cup of tea. But quicker than one can say cornflakes, the sound of outboard engines calls everyone into the Zodiac for the freezing 30-second ride across Perseverance Harbour. It's a routine that changes little during the 3-week stay, and everyone, including the ship's crew, becomes accustomed to the daily pattern. It was realized early on in the DXpedition that careful attention needed to be paid to the high-rate hours into Europe just before dark, as this was where the heaviest concentration of new country seekers was located. The smaller three-man early shift at dawn was a calculated decision based upon the dismal band performance before 7:30 a.m. local. But even so, the early risers who hit the shack at first light still managed to eke out a few QSOs, just enough to keep them awake until the relief team arrives.
Well, after 2 hours of sea queuing, we've worked VK1 Whiskey November. Back to autopilot. It's busy here on Campbell Island.
Campbell Island weather can be as moody as any other island in the sub-Antarctic zone, with violent wind and rain appearing at a moment's notice. Zodiac crossings during windstorms like these can be extremely dangerous. Weather patterns in this region of the Southern Ocean are controlled in part by the cold winds blasting out of Antarctica, interacting with fronts heading down from New Zealand and the Tasman Sea. Exposed islands in the 50-degree latitude belt of the Earth usually take the brunt of these powerful winds, which makes Campbell one of the world's wettest and dreariest places. But due to the fact that it lies well above the Antarctic convergence, Campbell also boasts one of the world's most stable year-round temperatures of about 7 degrees, with very little change from winter to summer. Another one of the daily routines of ZL9CI is the ritual of rotating antennas, which is usually done in a group or in pairs for safety reasons.
I'm Declan EI604, and I'm in charge of antennas. I got to move the 10-meter beam for the SSB station onto States. It's pointing at Europe right now. We've used the gimbal here to support the pole for the 10-meter beam. No rotators here, just the trusty Armstrong method. Just take off the bright yellow steel resistant rope to the hill. So that's it. And we'll see all you W's and kilo stations on 10 meters SSB in about 5 minutes.
The Expedition generator shed was conveniently located about 60 meters down the hill, out of sight and sound from the shack. One side is used for fuel storage, while the other houses the generator pool. Usually 2 or 3 fill-ups of diesel per day is all that is needed to keep the power flowing without interruption. Power lines were carefully planned out and color-coded to ensure equitable distribution up to the shack, but with the loss of 2 out of 5 generators towards the end of the expedition, a rather sensitive rework of the entire layout was needed to maintain power to 8 transceivers and amplifiers. Far more hours are spent inside the operating shack than on board the ship, but nevertheless, the Braveheart is still the center of life for the expedition. And the center of life for the Braveheart is without question the owner, Nigel Jolly. Full of strange Kiwi charisma and affectionately known amongst the team members as Captain Ahab or Deep Sea Dundee, he also doubles as crew boss and the expedition's gourmet chef.
Now, I'm not a chef, I'm not even a cook, but I've got this job because no one else was going to do it. I did offer anybody who wanted to come in, when we were on the wharf in Wellington before we actually came here, I said, now anybody who wanted to come into the kitchen and try their hand, please. Did they all volunteer? Not bloody one of them, mate, not one of them. You know, there's things like that that bind this bloody team together. But you've got a big cross-section. You've got Americans, Irish and guys from Japan and from New Zealand. And you've got to expect some sort of interbreeding problems there. Watching the guys on the Morse Key is really like watching guys from outer space. It's unbelievable the way they operate, the speed they operate, and put it this way, I wouldn't want to do it. It's not my sort of cup of tea.
On the 24th of January, ZL9CI shuts down just after 96,000 QSOs. Exhausted and anxious to get home, the 25th is spent dismantling the entire station in preparation for the Braveheart's departure at 8 p.m.
On a DXpedition, reputation's very important. I hadn't understood that before I came on this DXpedition, just how important it was, how important credibility was, how easy it is to get laughed at, how easy it is to get people to say you're doing a wonderful job. But I guess it's like everything else. It's easy to give a dog a bad name, and once you get a bad name, it's pretty difficult to undo it. I thought that this was just another DXpedition. I had no idea that a world record was a possibility, no idea at all. And when we made 11,000 QSOs on the first day, I thought, well, that's 11,000 QSOs, and people were saying, well, no one else has done that before. The actual possibility of breaking a world record had just never occurred to me before we came. And now that we've done it, of course everybody's delighted. And I think, well, goodness me, I never thought I'd be part of a world record in anything, certainly not in ham radio.
I think having achieved that, I still have great respect for the VK0 IR team. They set this standard. I think it's a tribute to what that team did that we've been able to make this standard. They set the standard, they set the methods on planning, advanced planning, planning of operations, the planning of the antenna field, which I was involved in. I'm looking forward to getting home. I left Dublin on the 27th of December. It's right after Christmas. I left a wife and 2 little fellas behind, one 7 years old and one only 4 months.
Everybody's been totally committed. focused on what we were here to do. Going home is probably something that's will be the highlight, I would imagine, when everybody's been committed for so long. I'm at the point now where I'm missing my kids, I'm missing my wife, I'm missing my dog. The camaraderie has been excellent. The group gets along well, and that has been a real plus for all of us, I believe. But it's not family, it's not home, and it's time now to get on with it for me. And I suppose that's pretty normal as you go into the last days of a long time away.
There are those that may have missed ZL9CI on a band here or a mode there, but now with everyone and everything packed up and loaded onto the Braveheart, that will have to wait for the next DXpedition. The empty shack and empty fields look irregular and odd without the curtain of antennas that stood their ground here not 9 hours earlier. And for some, that's just the way they like it.